In the first 6 months of 2026, Switzerland shipped more than 7 million watches out of the country. The fastest growing part of that number wasn't gold, and it wasn't tourbillons. It was mechanical watches with an export price under 500 francs, up almost 24%. Real watches, cheap ones. Now open a forum tonight, and someone will tell you that none of that counts. 7 lies, repeated like scripture. Let's kill them. The first one gets said with real concern in the voice, which is what makes it stick. You have to service it every 5 years, or you're destroying it. That number is real. It just isn't current. The 3 to 5 year rule comes from an era when the oils inside a movement dried out considerably faster than modern lubricants do. Rolex now suggests something closer to 10 years, depending on use. Omega and IWC point at 7 to 10. Tag Heuer and Tissot still say 5 or 6 for a daily wear automatic. 4 companies, 4 answers, which tells you immediately it was never one rule handed down from a mountain. Service by condition, not by calendar. If it's keeping decent time, holding its power reserve overnight, and the rotor spins quietly instead of grinding, you have a working watch. Wear it. The moment it starts losing a minute a day, or the second's hand stutters, or you hear something you've never heard before, that's your appointment. And the real exception nobody bothers to mention isn't mechanical at all. It's quartz. A dying cell can leak, and what comes out of it corrodes the circuit and the coil. Change the battery every 2 or 3 years, and never let a dead one sit inside the case for a year while you get around to it. Which brings us to 2 words printed at the bottom of a dial that carry more weight than almost anything else in this industry: Swiss made. Since January of 2017, the ordinance requires 60% of the total manufacturing cost of the finished watch to be generated in Switzerland, at least half the movement's value in Swiss components, and the technical development done there. The movement has to be cased up in Switzerland. Final inspection has to happen in Switzerland. But read it closely, because neither of those clauses requires that the parts were actually manufactured there. 60% is a floor. It is not a promise. 40% of that watch can come from anywhere on Earth, and the label still applies. And here's the part I find genuinely fascinating, because it explains everything about why the rule exists in the first place. Researchers at ETH Zurich and the University of St. Gallen found that consumers will pay up to 20% more for those 2 words, and up to 50% more on certain mechanical watches. That's not a scandal. That's a label doing exactly what it was built to do. Just know what you're buying, a standard, not a fairy tale about a man in an alpine village. Now the one that makes people angriest, quartz is disposable junk. Citizen's caliber 0100 runs at 8.4 megahertz and keeps time to within 1 second a year. 1. Grand Seiko's 9F holds 10 seconds a year, and every single oscillator is selected by hand, then aged for 3 months before it's allowed anywhere near a watch. This year, they squeezed that movement into a case 33 millimeters across and just over 9 millimeters thick, and it didn't give up a thing. Meanwhile, chronometer certification, the gold standard, the thing brands put on the dial in a special font, permits -4 to +6 seconds a day. A day. Sit with that comparison for a second, because it reframes the entire argument. Quartz isn't the lazy choice. It's a different discipline entirely, and the very best of it is harder to build, harder to regulate, and rarer than the automatic you're bragging about. I love mechanical watches. I wear them, but I'm done pretending a battery is a moral failing. Then there's the badge everyone learned to demand about 10 years ago. If it isn't in-house, it isn't serious. Here's what that ignores. Any competent watchmaker on Earth can open an ETA 2824 and service it, tonight, with parts on the shelf. Sellita's SW200 costs less and delivers comparable precision and reliability. These movements have been proving themselves for decades in watches from brands you'd never call cheap. Now price the alternative. One owner paid £485 to service a simple 3-hand in-house movement, a watch that tells the time and nothing else, where the workhorse would have cost a fraction of that. In-house buys you exclusivity, and sometimes it buys you genuine engineering. It can also buy you a proprietary part that only one factory makes, a service queue measured in months, and an invoice that arrives like bad news. Neither answer is wrong. Just stop pretending one of them is automatically noble. The next lie is the one that actually destroys watches, and it destroys them quietly. It says 50 meters, so I can swim in it. That number is not a depth. It's a static laboratory pressure test, held briefly, on a watch that isn't moving. 30 meters works out to roughly 43 pounds per square inch in a controlled tank. Then you swing your arm through water, or push off a wall, or drop into a pool, and the pressure at the point of impact spikes clean past what the case was ever asked to survive. Most people in this trade treat 100 meters as the practical floor for actual swimming, and this is the part that catches good people out. The SEAL's age, whether you swim or not. Rubber compresses, dries, takes a set. A watch that was fine in a shower 5 years ago is a different watch today, and nothing on the dial will tell you that. If it matters to you, get it pressure tested. It costs almost nothing, and it's the difference between a story and a funeral. Sapphire is scratch-proof. It sits at 9 on the Mohs scale, 1 step below diamond, and brands say so on every spec sheet. But hardness and toughness are not the same property, and confusing them is where the trouble starts. The harder a material is, the more brittle it becomes. A sharp impact that a softer mineral crystal would simply flex through and survive can crack sapphire outright. There is a reason NASA specified acrylic for the Speedmasters that went to the moon. In a capsule, a crystal that shatters into floating fragments is far more dangerous than one that picks up a scuff. So wear the watch. Sapphire will shrug off almost everything a normal life throws at it. Just don't let a marketing word convince you the thing on your wrist is invincible, and don't buy the anxiety that comes bundled with it. And now, the biggest one, because it's the one that keeps people out of this hobby entirely. A watch is an investment. The secondary market fell 10.7% in 2023. It fell another 6.1% in 2024. It recovered 4.9% in 2025, and that recovery got reported like a resurrection. As of January 2026, Rolex value retention sits at 6.7%, down 3.4 points in a single quarter, and only 3 brands in the entire industry still resell above retail. That last uptick everyone remembers, back in the early 20s, was built on cheap money and crypto gains and people who had never worn a watch in their lives, treating them as an asset class. They left. The watches stayed. And underneath all of that, the same industry that watched its high-end exports slide is currently shipping record numbers of mechanical watches priced under 500 francs because ordinary people never stopped wanting a nice thing on their wrist. That's the whole story right there. The money left, and the hobby was still standing. You do not need $5,000 to be allowed in the room. You never did. Buy something you want to look at every morning. Learn what it can and can't survive. Wear it until the bracelet takes the shape of your wrist. That's the only return that has never once gone negative.